which the Targum says, where the Torah talks about the idea of being misboinen, his boinenus. Let me get to the point. So from Targum, you see the Targum, the translate. We know that all the months of the year come from Bavel. So it's Bavel, it's Babylonian. So it has to have something to do with that language. So there's a Targum that says on his boinenus, on the word his boinenus, which means to do, to contemplate, to think, to put in thought. The Targum says, the lashon of the Targum is very similar to the word Elul. I'm not remembering exactly the word, but it's very similar to the word Elul. So it says in the Svarim that Elul stems from his boinenus. Elul is a time when we stop and we start thinking. We hear the shofar, we hear the blowing of the shofar, and we say to ourselves, how was my year? How am I getting ready for Rosh Hashanah? So that is basically the idea behind the word Elul, which comes from the idea of his boinenus. The Balatanya writes that Elul, the whole entire month of Elul, the Yud Gimel Mechila Derachmim, the Yud Gimel attributes of Hashem, which is Hashem Kerachim V'Chanan, is Shoira, meaning it has an impact on the world, on the Olam, on our world, and it's a time that we have a very amazing opportunity to connect to Hashem and to be ma'oire, to awaken the Rachmanis, the mercy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu towards us. This is the Balatanya. So he says this fascinating thought. He says that in the days of Elul, which is now, where we're now in Elul, which, like I mentioned before, Elul means to be misboinen, to think and to put in more thought. And then he says the idea that the Yud Gimel Mechila Derachmim, the 13 midas of Hashem, Kerachim, which is the midas that we know, which we say all the time, that it has such a powerful koyach. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, these midas are in our universe. Obviously, this is a Kabbalistic thought, but the idea is, says the Balatanya, that the month of Elul is Molei Rachmim. It's filled with Rachmanis. Reb Pinchas Koretze goes one step further and he says, Al Pi Kabbalah, it says that a person shouldn't say Tehillim at night. Tonight, by night before Chatzos is not a time to say Tehillim. Says Reb Pinchas of Koretz, who was a Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov, he says that in the month of Elul, since it's a Yemei HaRachmim, it's time of mercy, you could say Tehillim at night because the dinim, the judgments, have no power. The koyach of judgment in the Yemei Elul, they have no koyach. Therefore, he says a very interesting thing. He says, even though when it comes to Shabbos, we are allowed to be moisif mechol ala kodesh, we could add from the weekdays into Shabbos kodesh. As we all know, we could be mekabel Shabbos early. We could do early Shabbos. Says Reb Pinchas Koretz, so when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, don't do that. Rosh Hashanah, you should only daven Ma'ariv, he says, when it's already for sure night. Why? He says this. He says what we just mentioned. He says, since Yemei Elul or Yemei Rachmim, and Rosh Hashanah is a time of judgment, we don't want to take away even one moment of the Yemei Rachmim. Don't minimize, don't make the month of Elul shorter by being mikabel, by bringing in Rosh Hashanah earlier. So you're taking away from the Yemei Rachmim. Don't do that. So therefore, he says, when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, wait till it's for sure it's night, and don't do it before, which is an amazing thought, as we could see. The Panim Yafos, the Baal HaFlo writes, he says, 1 hour in the month of Elul is so chashuv, it's so special, like an entire day during the year. That's how special, that's the month that we are now in. The month of Elul is such a special month, says the Panim Yafos, the Baal HaFlo, that 1 hour in the day of Elul is as chashuv as an entire day of the other days of the year. And he points out this works very well with a very famous pasuk. We know that it says, the Gemara says in Masechtas Rosh Hashanah, on the pasuk, Dirshu Hashem b'yimotzai, you shall search Hashem in the time that you could find him. Kara'u, you should call to him b'hiyoisai karov, when he is close, when he's closer to us. So the idea of Dirshu Hashem b'himotzai, says the Gemara, it applies for the Aseres Yimei Teshuvah. Dirshu Hashem is a famous Chazal. When is the time that Dirshu Hashem b'himotzai, if you search Hashem, you will find him? Says the Gemara, Eilu Aseres Yomim Shebein Rosh Hashanah L'Yom Kippurim. The 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is the time when we search Hashem and we find him. But says the Haflah, he says something so fascinating. He says the other half of the pasuk, which is Kreuhu, call to him b'yoisai karov, when he's close to us, applies to Elul. So says the Haflah, if this is the case, let's stop for a moment and let's translate these two words, b'himotzoi and the word karov. He says b'himotzoi, the translation, the understanding of b'himotzoi is when you search for something, you then find it. But you still have to search. Says the Haflah, but when it comes to the other part of the pasuk, which applies to Elul, it says karov, which is just like you have something close to you. You don't have to search after it. You don't have to search for it. So he says, if this is the case, he says something hafla v'fella. What do we learn from this? That Hashem Kaviyachol is way closer to us in the time of Elul, b'yimei Elul, than in the time of Aseres Yimei Teshuvah. Because in the time of Aseres Yimei Teshuvah, says the Haflah, you still have to search after Hashem. As it says, Dirshu Hashem b'himotzai. You have to be doidish, you have to go and search and you have to find him. But when it comes to Elul, Kira'u, scream out to him. Because Hashem is close to us. We don't have to search after Hashem. So what do we learn from this, says the Haflah? That Elul is a way bigger power, a koyach, for our tefillos with the right preparation to get into the Heilige Rosh Hashanah. So from all the above, we see this fascinating ideas of how powerful Elul is. As we all know, the concept of Melech Basada, that Kaviyachol Hashem is now in the fields. And when a king is in the fields, there's no barriers. There's nothing blocking, nothing holding back. And you could just approach the king and you could ask the king for whatever you need. Recently, not long ago in Eretz Yisrael, the head Rav from the Ashkenazi Kehillah was Nifter. His name was Reb Tuvia Weiss. This Rabbi Weiss, he was Kenai Nada when he passed away. He was very, very old. And he gave over this story, and he connected the story to the same idea, to the same concept, this idea that we're discussing over here, which is the power of Elul and the power of connecting to Hashem and Elul. And when we connect to him, it's way easier that our tefillah should be accepted. So he gave over a story. It's a famous story, but it's a powerful story, which is worthwhile to share. That when he was a child, during the Second World War, he was 12 years old. He lived right next to the city of Preshburg. He lived not far from Preshburg. And in those days, he says, it wasn't the way it's today with technology, that people know everything happening in the entire world in a few seconds. Back then, during the war, people didn't know what was going on. One city had no idea what was happening in the next city. If in the next city, the Nazis were already doing whatever they were doing, people in the other city had no idea. So what happened was, he had one of the Roshei HaKehillah, one of the heads of his Kehillah, where he lived, which was not far from Preshburg, asked this young Tuvia, which was 12 years old at that time, if he could do him a favor and go to Preshburg to find out what is happening over there, so he could let know his Kehillah, what they need to do. And he dafka took a boy who was before the bar mitzvah, so it's less noticeable. Anyways, he went to Preshburg. He met with this Rosh HaKol, and the Rosh HaKol told him that things are really not good. And then he told him something very interesting. He said, not long ago, a little bit more than a week ago, the King of England, it's a famous thing that happened, sent 1,000 visas for 1,000 kids to be able to leave Austria and be saved from the war. And he said, I see you, you're here in front of me. You're such a sweet boy, even though I don't know you, but you risked your life and you came to me. Here you go. And he gave him this visa to be able to go with this train and escape Austria and go to London, to England. So this boy came home and he gave over to the Rosh HaKol, whatever, to the head of the Kehillah, whatever he needed to. And his parents obviously supported the idea that he should go and catch the train. They gave him all the brachos, and they wished him goodwill. And he always used to say, his mother, the last thing that his mother was screaming after him, you should remember those bleiben a Yid, you should stay a Yid. So what happened was, he was saved. He was on this train. He was saved with a total of 1,000 boys. And now we're getting to the main point of the Maisa, to the main point of the Maisa. At some point, these boys, they were already in England. The King of England wanted to see these boys. He wanted to shep nachas. He wanted to take pride what he did, that he saved these boys. And there was a time that was set that the King of England would be driving with his chariot, and the boys would be 500 boys from each side, and he would be able to see, the boys that he saved. The time came, and the chariot and the king started, driving with his chariot through these boys standing from both sides. And suddenly a young boy jumps onto the chariot, and the king's, close people wanted to push him off. And the king said, no. Let him come up. He comes up to the king, and what he said, and he spoke to the king. This young boy spoke to the king, and what he said was, "Honorable king, I'm so grateful for what you did to me. You saved my life. But how can my joy be complete if my parents are still in a place that they're not safe and I have no idea what's going to happen to them?" The king thought for a moment, and he told the boy, "Give me the address of your parents." And he wrote it down. A few weeks later, the parents with his father and mother with the entire family came to England, and they were saved as well. So when Reb Tuvia, when the Rav of Eretz Yisrael would give over the story, he said, let's think into the story. Number one, this would have never happened when the king was in his palace. Because when the king is in his palace, there are so many guards surrounding the palace, not letting anyone get close. It only was able to happen because the king was riding with his chariot and the child was able to get on. So this is basically what we're talking about, Elul. Kavyochol, Hashem is driving, Kavyochol, he's here with us. It's a time, it's an opportunity. But then the Rav said one more idea, which is so powerful. He says, a person should never say to themselves, who am I? What is my koyach? Do I have strength? I don't have strength. Don't put yourself down. The other children didn't take this opportunity. This child said to himself, I'm going to do whatever it takes, and I will not make cheshbonis contemplate if it's going to work, not going to work. I'm going to do it. And he jumped on, and he jumped onto the chariot, and he was successful. To take this idea of not giving up, meaning not minimizing our strength, let's tie it into this week's Parsha. One of the many things in this week's Parsha, the Torah later on talks about the idea, which is in Perek Chaf Pasuk Aleph. The Torah talks about the idea when you go out to war on your enemy, Uri'isan, you see horses and wagons, you see this Amrav, you see this powerful nation that's way more powerful than you. Says the Torah, Loi Sira, don't be afraid of them. Ki Hashem Elokecha imach, Hashem, your Hashem is with you. Hamalcha, that brought you up Me'eretz Mitzrayim, from the land of Mitzrayim. So basically, the Torah says, when you go in war, don't be afraid, which is the natural, obviously, the natural instinct to be afraid. Says the Torah, don't be afraid, because I am Hashem who brought you up of Mitzrayim. So obviously, the simple of his understanding is, just like Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, and he made everything possible, so the same could happen all the time. But the Truest Chain was one of the Rebbes back in Poland, and he was actually in Ukraine, and one of his great-grandchildren are buried actually in Buffalo. People go to his kever, and they daven over there. And Baruch Hashem, I was zoche to daven for my kala. But the Truest Chain says a fascinating thought. He says, so many times we struggle with this way amazing struggle, which is the Yetzer Hara. The power of the Yetzer Hara is so powerful. How is it that I'm able to overcome him? And sometimes we give up. We say to ourselves, you know what? I give up. I don't have koyach. I can't. I don't have the strength. Says the Truest Chain, besides the actual understanding of this pasuk that I just mentioned, the physical war, he says it also hints to the spiritual war, to the ruchniistic war. He says, we constantly go out to war with the Yetzer Hara, and we see the Yetzer Hara is so powerful. He has all his messengers, all his shluchim, all his different angels that go against us and try to get us, and we could chas v'sholem lose it, and we could give up. Says the pasuk, don't give up. Stop for a moment. Think. We were once in Mitzrayim. We were almost in the Nun Shari Tumah. We were almost in the depth of Tumah. And the last minute, everything turned around. Says the Truest Chain, same with every single person. So many times we fall into this place of yush, of giving up, and we feel that everything is blocked. Everything, we don't have anywhere to turn. The world is basically a blocked, nothing, there's no opening for me. Says the Truest Chain, says the pasuk, think for a moment. In Mitzrayim, that's the way everything seemed. Everything seemed going against the Yidden. And we were almost in the Nun Shari Tumah, and everything turned around in an instinct of a moment. He says, so the same with every person. When the Yetzer Hara comes against you, and he wants to attack you, say to yourself, everything could turn around in an instinct of a second. The Degel Machne Ephraim, which is the Einikel of the Baal Shem Tov, He brings a mashal from Zaydi, the Baal Shem Tov, which is exactly what we just said from the Tzuras Chaim. The Baal Shem Tov explains the challenges that we have with the Yetzer Hara. The way he calls it, it's just achizas enayim, which means the eye of a person in our flesh and body, it seems like a terrible battle. But really, it's just sort of like Dimyan. It's just a thing that could disappear in a moment. So he brings a mashal. He says there was once a king that wanted to see if the people in his kingdom are really loyal to him. What did he do? He put around his palace a lot of mountains and thorns and a lot of valleys. Obstacle upon obstacle he put around his palace. The reason why he did this, so in order to see which person would be really emistic loyal to him and will break through all the barriers and then come to him. And woo, will he open his arms, the king, and accept this person. Says the Baal Shem Tov, every day when we wake up, so the mashal, I didn't finish the mashal. So says the Baal Shem Tov, but all this was only a fantasy. It wasn't real. And when people were started to walk on this mountain, suddenly it disappeared. Once you did, it's called in the Zohar, Isarusa de Lisata, you put in your own ishtadlos, your own energy, your own koyach, suddenly it disappeared. When you went into the valley and you put in a little of your own effort, again it disappeared. Everything disappeared, and you were able to see the king. Says the Baal Shem Tov, this is with us every single day. When we wake up and we say, Moida'ani lefanecha Hashem Elokai, we say, we thank Hashem that he gave us back our neshama. Says the Baal Shem Tov, keep in mind, every step in the road, there could be obstacles that only seems to be obstacles. So Hashem wants to see how loyal, how real you are with serving Hashem. But once you will be misgaber, you'll do isgabrut, you'll strengthen yourself, you'll see that everything will disappear. And the Tzuras Chaim says exactly the same thing. Don't give up, says the Tzuras Chaim, because we were in Mitzrayim in the lowest of the lowest. The Koshnitzer Magid on this pasuk says also something which is so powerful and so fascinating. Rashi says, 2 psukim later, after these psukim that I just read, it says like this, Pasuk Gimel, V'omar Alehem, and the Kohen, the Mashiach Milchama, the Kohen that was anointed to be in charge of the war, says to the Yidden, when they're getting ready to war, Shema Yisrael, listen Yisrael, Atem Krevim Ayoim, you're getting close today, La Milchama, into war, Alayvechem, and your enemies, Al Yerach Levavchem, your heart should not be softened, Al Tiru, you should not be afraid, Val Tachpesu, you should not lose yourself, Val Tatsu, you should not be broken with name because of them. Says Rashi on the word Shema Yisrael, says Rashi, Afilu ein bechem, even if there is not with you, even if you don't have only zechus ela kriyas shema belvat, you only have the merit of the reading of the kriyas shema. Kedai atem, you are worthy that I should save you. Shema Yisrael, only with the Shema Yisrael itself, you are worthy to be saved. Says the Avodas Yisrael. When we take these psukim and we say these are psukim that apply to every single person in every single generation, as we know that Torah teaches us something for every person in every generation, not something that had to do many, many years ago. Says the Avodas Yisrael, the Koshnitzer Magid. You know what this Rashi is teaching us, and this pasuk is teaching us? There are moments in life that we think to ourselves, who am I? What am I doing? How do my days look like? How am I learning the way I should learn? Am I davening the way I should daven? Am I doing chesed the way I should do chesed? I'm being kind to other people the way I should be kind. And we start saying to ourselves, I'm not worth anything. I'm not worthy. And we fall into chas v'sholem tiyush. Says the Avodas Yisrael, this Rashi teaches us an amazing lesson. Shema Yisrael. Do you say Kriya Shema every single day? If you say Shema Yisrael every single day only because of this itself, you are worthy to be saved from both the physical and the spiritual war. Shema Yisrael on its own is so powerful that it gives us the koyach, the strength, and the schus to be saved from both physical and spiritual. And this is exactly what Rashi says. In the schus of Kriya Shema on its own, we are worthy. We have the schus to be saved both from the physical and from the spiritual war. And Hashem loves us. One of the things in this week's Parsha, besides what we just spoke about, is a very powerful, famous pasuk, which is worthwhile to talk about for a few minutes. In Kapitel Yudches, pasuk Yud Gimel, the Torah says, Tamim Tia, complete you shall be. Im Hashem Elokecha, with Hashem your Hashem. Says Rashi, and this is such a powerful Rashi. Rashi on this pasuk says as follows: His halech you shall go imoy with him, which is Hashem, b'tumimis, with a complete way, which means don't think into things and start asking, why is it that Hashem is doing this to me? Be complete. V'tetzapeloi. You should look out for him, and you should have bitachon in him. You should hope for him. Meaning, even if you see things going in the way that you're not feeling that things are going so well, you should hope that things will turn around. This is part of being tamim. It's not a stira, a lack of emunah. In the same time that you shouldn't ask any questions, still hope for the good. But don't start thinking and start getting into things that are going to happen. Oy, who knows what's going to happen? Maybe I'm going to lose money, chas v'sholom, who knows what. Don't. And that is the reason why the Torah says, don't go to all these witchcrafts, all these powers that are tumadiga powers, because basically they could mislead you. Don't do that. Everything that will come upon you, kabel b'tmimis, except with a completeness. You will be with him, you'll be with Hashem, and you will be part of Hashem. So the previous Skveret Rebbe used to say, it's an amazing thing. Rashi usually writes very short. We know that Rashi kept on rewriting his Pirish, and he made it so short. Yet over here, we have a pasuk with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words, and Rashi goes on and on. Rashi is getting into a lot of lengthy explanations. Why says so? The previous Rebbe said why, because Rashi knew this is a struggle that we struggle, and this is a struggle that we will continuously struggle. The struggle of saying to ourselves, Hashem, I trust you. Hashem, I'm basically with you. I'm not going to ask why you did it. I'm not going to look and search people who could tell me what's going to happen. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go to these witchcrafts or whatever. I'm not going to look after what's going to happen. I'm going to accept what you give me. And then you will be part of Hashem. Skveret Rebbe used to say, and when we are part of Hashem, we're with Hashem, then we have everything we need. So many times we go through struggles, and we have to strengthen ourselves. And we have to say to ourselves, Hashem, I'm with you. I'm not giving up. Just to finish up this year, and afterwards, if anyone has something that you want to add, you want to ask, please feel free to do so. But just to finish up, in the same kapitel that we said, the same parak before, parak Chaf, pasuk Yud, it says like this. It says, Kisikra vel ir, when you will come close to a city, lehilochem oleha, to go in war with this city, you shall try to make peace with the people living over there and ask them if they're willing to, in a peaceful way, to basically let the Yidden settle in their portion, in the place that they're living in. So, an amazing thought of one of the previous Vishnitzer Rebbes, which is so powerful to end the Shiur with. He says, if you take the word kisikrav, you take the word sikrav, Tov Kuf Reish Beis, and you do the gematria, the numeric value of tikrav is the same gematria of Shabbos, of the word Shabbos, which is 702. Tikrav is 702, and Shabbos is 702. He says beautifully. He says, for us to be able to overcome our challenges that we have throughout the week, the only way to do this is through Shabbos Kodesh, which means that the more we put into Shabbos, the more excitement, the more happiness, zmiris, learning, kedusha, the more we put into Shabbos, the easier would be the challenges throughout the week. So he says the same idea that we said before. He says, Ir could also be the city, it says in Choivas Alvavas that Ir could be the person. The person's body is like a city. We're like a small world. He says, if you want to be able, you want to be able that your body should be able to, to go in war with the spirits, with the Yetzirah, with the Koiches Hatuma. Keep in mind Tikrav. Keep in mind Shabbos. With putting in to Shabbos Kodesh, you invest in Shabbos Kodesh, you'll be able to basically withdraw in the weekdays. So my bracha to all of us is, may we be able to have the seichel, to use the month of Elul in a seichel way, and to understand that we could connect to Hashem way easily. He's close to us now, and we should also keep in mind that with all challenges that we go through, it's just a test from Hashem, and things could turn around in a second. Don't give up, and let's keep in mind that Shabbos Kodesh is powerful, and it gives us koyach, strength, to overcome our challenges. Anything to add? Anything to say? Anyone? It seems like everyone is fine.
Very powerful.
Koyach.
Very nice.
Beautiful. Koyach.
Yasha. Be well. Bye.
Shabbos.
Your Shabbos. Be well. Who else do we see over here? Rabbi in Greenfield. Who else? Not sure. Okay, Kol Tov. Be well. Bye.